Today's deck jumped to the front of the line thanks to today's patron. Priority deck requests are one of the many perks you get by becoming a patron. Consider supporting the channel today. Welcome back to today's build. I'll be your guide to this wonderful game we all love. Let's get started. Today's deck is a bit of a sticky subject. Her name is Shelob, Child of Ungoliant, and this is Itsy Bitsy Nightmare Fuel. Hang around to the end of the video to learn more about a giveaway. Shelob is an 8/8 for 6 mana with Death Touch and Ward 2, which is impressive enough, except she also gives those abilities to our other spiders, and wants our opponent's creatures to die to our spiders. And when they do, we make token copies of them that can be used as food for us. Shelob acts almost like a sort of inverse to Merkle. In the Merkle deck, we wanted to kill our own creatures to make token copies of them, which, by the way, Shelob's ability doesn't technically preclude us from doing, though if that's the route we take, the primary obstacle will be getting our spiders to punch our own things, since it's a rare thing for cards like Cetessan Tactics or Dubious Challenge to be printed that allows to do this kind of trick. Instead, we'll want to take advantage of the foods we make that come from keeping our opponent's creatures from sticking, without necessarily appealing to the life gain ability attached to them, since that's not all really that great. There's just one problem. Shelob doesn't actually want us to play spiders. But you thought she did, right? I've talked a little before about why I don't like playing tribal decks, but I'll expand on that here. Tribal decks always set before the player a kind of puzzle. Do I focus on playing more cards from my tribe, even if they're worse than cards outside of it? Or do I sacrifice some of that theme for functionality? In the case of Shelob, her first ability gets better when you have a lot of spiders on board, but most of these creatures are really bad, and giving them all Death Touch and Ward 2 doesn't make them playable. The average card slot occupied by those spiders could have been much better, so leaning into spiders subtracts from the deck's performance. This isn't like Elf Tribal where every other elf ramps, draws cards, makes tokens, and pumps the whole team. It's kinda sad that the tribes that would be most interesting to build are also the ones with the least support. The good news though, if you could call it that, is that her second ability works just as well with 1 spider as it does with 10. All our fight spells would work equally as well even if we built the deck with no other spiders at all. This is not Spider Tribal. Conversely, without Shelob on the field, our spiders would do virtually nothing. What we'd be left with is a bunch of creatures that are frankly underwhelming as a tribe, which will be the thesis behind our first several cuts. First, we're cutting nearly all the spiders. They're just awful. In particular though, Doomweaver, Watcher in the Web, and Sporeweb Weaver are really bad picks. Even if we did decide to move into the spider theme, as I imagine many people still will, Sporeweb doesn't make spider tokens, so we don't care about them. Spiders are known for having very low power and high toughness, so Doomweaver isn't actually drawing very many cards. And for 6 mana, I want to draw a lot of cards. Frankly, I don't think anyone is attacking us with Shelob on the field, so the enhanced blocking ability here is really unimportant. We will be keeping some spiders around, of course, but we're specifically keeping the spiders that have damage abilities stable to them, and a couple of ones with Death Touch by default, because that helps reduce the number of card slots and provide a very small amount of redundancy, just in case Shelob gets tied up somehow. Assault Formation would be much better if there were a lot more spiders to choose from for the deck. As it is, there aren't a lot of board states where we'll have enough spiders to make this effect that attractive, even if you built this deck as Spider Tribal, and you shouldn't, but if you did, Assault Formation still isn't that great. I'd rather have the card slot for things we're actually trying to do, like use fight spells to kill opponent's creatures, or utilize those food tokens in some way. Speaking of utilizing food tokens, Jaheira is neat, but by the time we're making those food tokens, we don't really need the mana. I'd much rather have Karn on board to turn those foods back into creatures instead, since they keep the mana value from being copies. Viridian Longbow and Thornbite Staff are honestly really good in these kinds of Golgari fight decks. But since we're running so few spiders, the one creature we'd really want to equip this to is Shelob, who wants to attack and be tapped a lot more than she wants to be back on defense, really. So we're better off with more instant speed fight spells and fewer artifacts like this. So what's our timeline? Turn 1, we'll play Wild Growth, Utopia Sprawl, and Delighted Halfling to help set up our mana to ramp into Shelob. Turn 2, we can play Veteran Explorer, Pentad Prism, and Gaia's Touch for more of the same, helping to launch us further and further into our 6-mana Spider. On turn 3, we can play Mari, Morbid Opportunist, or Toshiro Umezawa to set up for when our opponent's creatures start dropping like flies, while Overgrowth, Pier's Whim, and Tempt with Discovery churn out even more mana, both for us and our opponents. In particular though, I really want to highlight Toshiro Umezawa as being an amazing pick for this deck, because it means that when our spider, Shelob, deals damage to our opponent's creatures and kills them, not only do we get a food token, but we can also get the fight spell back. Turn 4 is the first turn we'd really want to get down Shelob, but if we can't, we'll run out a second Shelob, a Revel in Riches, and a Curse of Clinging Webs. We're also playing Cloudkill, Yahena's Expertise, and Culling Ritual to make sure our opponents have spewed their hands and are only left with big, juicy targets for a turn 5 Shelob. With Shelob in play, Spinning Wheel Kick, Roar of Challenge, and Predatory Witness become devastating to be on the receiving end of. We can also play Stew the Conies, Prize Fight, and Ancient Animus to drop more of our opponent's creatures, while also subtly setting up some tokens for the future. Next, we'll play Stinging Study, Hunter's Prowess, and Knight's Whisper to refuel our hand. And since those food tokens are copies of dead creatures and retain their mana values, we can use Fateful Handoff and Morbid Curiosity to turn those foods into card draw. Do not be sacrificing these foods for life. With our Spider-Verse assembled, we can close out the game with a number of avenues, but Marionette Master is the most prominent one, because it's great at weaponizing food and treasure tokens. But a Spider Spawning or Arachnogenesis and Defend the Fangbearer is also immensely powerful, given just how pitiful their blocking state is at this stage of the game. I'll admit, the first time I built this deck, I built it wrong myself, okay? Spiders just aren't that great right now. I actually once made a custom commander that worked kinda similarly to this. But a lot like Shelob, the tribe that this deck wants you to build just doesn't have the kind of support that you need in order to make a really good tribal deck. So you end up focusing exclusively on the commander as one of the few good members of that tribe. It's just too hard to justify cards like Broodweaver in any deck these days without bringing it down to 6, 5, or even lower. But these changes help bring our 8-legged mama up to 7. Special thanks to all my patrons on Patreon. When I started this channel, I wanted to provide insight into deck building decisions with my videos. In practice, what often happens is I talk for 30 minutes about every little nuance of a deck, which is longer than I'm comfortable with posting to YouTube, so a lot of that discussion gets cut for time. Here, patrons can find extended discussions on their favorite decks, in-depth guides on complex game actions, request priority deck techs, and more. So if you enjoy this content, consider becoming a patron today. One of the things my patrons have made possible is a special series of deck techs that I'm really excited to show off to you guys. When I finally get them all uploaded, I'll be giving away a special collection of altars and tokens that I've made, corresponding to each deck on the channel. For example, for the Merfolk Lord of Bones deck, the prize is a set of double-faced altars of the most prominent cards in the deck, whose backsides are set in the constellation frame with updated text to show that they're acting as enchantments now. For every 1,000 views on each video, I'll increase the prize pool for that deck. All you have to do to be eligible to win is be subscribed to the channel. If you like this video, the next decks I'll be looking at can be found here in no particular order, so if you see something you like, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss them, and check out the playlist in the top left for more. Thanks for watching!